When a woman knows her worth without needing anyone's validation, something shifts, not just in her behavior, but in the energy she carries into every interaction. You notice it immediately. It's not arrogance and it's not indifference. It's a quiet certainty, a grounded sense of self that doesn't rise and fall based on who texts back, who compliments her, or who chooses her. And this kind of woman becomes unforgettable to a man because she represents something rare, someone who cannot be swayed by approval, attention, or temporary affection. She has defined her own value first, and because of that, the world responds to her differently. Most people don't realize how deeply men pick up on this. A man can sense the difference between a woman who is hoping to be chosen and a woman who has already chosen herself. One leans forward trying to prove she is worthy. The other simply stands tall and lets her presence speak for her. And men feel the contrast. The woman who bases her worth on him becomes predictable. She adjusts herself to fit his standards. She tries harder when he pulls away. She forgives too easily when he falls short. But the woman who knows her value doesn't bend herself into shapes for anyone. She doesn't audition. She doesn't chase. She doesn't perform. She simply shows up as she is, and either a man aligns with that or he doesn't. This self-worth doesn't come from words or affirmations. It comes from lived experience. It comes from the moment she stayed true to her boundary, even when she was tempted to bend it. It comes from choosing herself in situations that asked her to shrink. It comes from refusing relationships that offered attention, but not consistency, interest, but not investment, attraction, but not effort. Over time, she realizes something crucial. Peace is more important than being chosen by the wrong person. That's the moment a man feels her value in the deepest way, not because she tells him, but because she becomes someone who cannot be lost easily. A man respects what he fears losing, and he fears losing a woman who centers her life on her purpose rather than his presence. She has goals, passions, friendships, and standards that don't disappear when a man enters her world. He becomes part of her life, not the center of it. And that balance is magnetic. It makes him want to do better, show up stronger, and match her level. Without her ever forcing anything, he naturally steps forward because he senses the truth. She doesn't need him, but she would choose him. And being chosen by someone who doesn't depend on you carries a power men never forget. The irony is that the more she validates herself, the more deeply he learns to value her. Because when a woman loves herself at a high level, it sets the bar for how she should be loved. And when she refuses to settle, it challenges him to rise. So let this be the reminder you carry with you. A woman becomes unforgettable not by trying to be enough for a man, but by becoming enough for herself. When you stop seeking validation from the outside, the right people feel pulled to validate you from the inside, and the wrong ones simply fall away. There's something uniquely powerful about a woman who understands the difference between giving presence and giving pursuit. Men can feel this difference immediately, even if they can't articulate it. When a woman gives presence, her energy feels open, grounded, warm. She's attentive without being invasive, interested without being insistent, available without being absorbed. There's no grasping, no trying to secure a response, no hidden agenda running beneath the surface. Her presence communicates something simple yet profound. I'm here because I want to be, not because I need to be. But pursuit is very different. Pursuit carries tension. It carries fear, fear of losing him, fear of missing an opportunity, fear of being overlooked. When a woman shifts from presence to pursuit, her actions start revolving around him instead of around her own life. She checks her phone more often. She adjusts her schedule to fit his. She becomes overly responsive to small crumbs of attention. And without even noticing, she begins living in reaction to him rather than from her own internal compass. This is the moment the dynamic quietly changes, not because she did anything wrong, but because the energy of pursuit takes her out of her power. Men are instinctively drawn to women who don't chase them because it creates a sense of mutual space, mutual freedom. Presence invites, pursuit pressures, and healthy masculine energy responds to invitation far more strongly than pressure. The woman who offers presence gives a man the opportunity to step closer on his own terms. She allows him to show interest, to invest, to contribute, to pursue. She creates the conditions in which he gets to choose her, not because she pushed for it, but because she inspired it. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in modern dating. We're told that if we don't try hard enough, we'll miss our chance, lose the moment, or push someone away. But the truth is the opposite. When you over-pursue, you rob the other person of the chance to reveal their intention. When you stay in your presence, you give them the space to show who they are, how much they care, and what effort they're truly willing to invest. And that clarity is invaluable. The woman who masters this balance is unforgettable because she never overwhelms the connection, she complements it. She brings her full self into the room, her curiosity, her kindness, her humor, her warmth, but she never uses these things as bait. She doesn't perform connection, she simply participates in it. And men feel that. They remember the woman who didn't rush anything, didn't force anything, didn't panic when things were uncertain. Her steadiness becomes a rare kind of reassurance. But there is a kind of beauty in letting someone meet you halfway, not because you're holding back, but because you're holding your center. And that's what presence really is, choosing to show up without abandoning yourself. So carry this with you. Your presence is enough. When you stop chasing connection, the right people will rise to meet you. Men don't stay with the woman who pursues them. They stay with the woman whose presence makes them want to pursue her. A woman who sets clear, non-negotiable boundaries becomes unforgettable, not because she's difficult, but because she's defined. She knows exactly where she ends and where another person begins. And that clarity creates a level of respect that can't be forced, requested, or begged for. It's earned through the strength of her choices. A man feels it immediately. He might not understand why he feels more alert, more intentional, more careful with his words and actions around her, but it's because she has made it clear that access to her has a standard attached to it. Boundaries are not walls. They're not emotional distance, coldness, or punishment. They're simply the rules a person lives by to protect their peace, their time, and their emotional well-being. When a woman lacks boundaries, she becomes overly flexible. She allows repeated disappointments. She accepts inconsistency disguised as effort. She believes tolerance equals love, but what actually happens is that she becomes easier to take advantage of, easier to keep at arm's length, easier to treat casually, not because she is unworthy, but because she hasn't shown where the line is. A man learns how to treat a woman based on what she allows, not what she desires, not what she hints at, and not what she complains about, what she consistently allows. The woman with boundaries doesn't need to explain them again and again. Her actions speak for her. If he doesn't follow through, she doesn't punish him or create drama. She simply steps back. If he shows inconsistency, she creates distance. If he crosses a line, she doesn't ask him to return to the right side. She calmly stays on hers. And that, more than anything, is what commands respect. Men rise to the level of the standard in front of them. A boundary isn't about controlling him. It's about controlling your participation in the dynamic. When she shows what she will and won't accept, he gets clarity on what kind of man he must be to keep her. The right man will rise, the wrong man will fall away. And either outcome protects her. What makes her unforgettable is that her boundaries force a man to bring his whole character to the table. Not just charm, not just attraction, not just effort on his best days, but consistency, accountability, and real emotional presence. A woman who upholds boundaries challenges him to stop being passive and start being intentional. He feels the difference between losing access to someone who tolerated everything and losing access to a woman who never needed him enough to abandon herself. And here's the deeper truth. Boundaries don't push the right man away. They filter out the ones who only wanted convenience, comfort, or ego validation. They make room for someone capable of giving what she gives. So remember this. The boundary you set today becomes the respect you receive tomorrow. A woman who honors her limits becomes a woman a man never forgets, because she teaches him how to step into the relationship with maturity, not entitlement. She becomes the standard he measures future connections against. And that is the kind of woman no man ever gets over. Emotional independence is one of the most misunderstood strengths a woman can possess. People often mistake it for detachment, as if being emotionally independent means being cold, distant, or uninterested. But that's not emotional independence. True emotional independence is the ability to care deeply without collapsing into someone else's inconsistency. It's the ability to remain grounded even when emotions run high. It's loving someone without losing the center of your own life. Men feel the difference instantly. A woman who is emotionally dependent reacts to everything he does. If he texts, her day brightens. If he doesn't, her mood drops. If he pulls away, she panics. If he leans in, she clings. Her emotional state becomes tied to his actions. Without meaning to, she ends up living in a constant cycle of emotional waiting. Waiting for a message, waiting for reassurance, waiting for him to give her a sense of stability she hasn't built within herself. But a woman who is emotionally independent doesn't place that weight on anyone, not because she is guarded, but because she has built a full life she does not intend to abandon for a relationship. Her happiness comes from multiple sources. Her identity isn't wrapped around a man's attention. Her sense of value isn't dictated by how desirable he finds her on any given day. And this creates a kind of emotional freedom that becomes deeply attractive. She can love without losing herself. She can give without draining herself. She can stay connected without becoming consumed. That balance is what draws a man in, not pushes him away. The irony is that emotional independence creates more intimacy, not less. Why? Because the relationship stops being a place of pressure and becomes a place of genuine connection. A man can sense that she isn't expecting him to fix her loneliness, heal her wounds, or be the sole source of her joy. He feels safer, not threatened. In this space, he can show up authentically. He can express, he can pursue, he can invest, because he knows she isn't depending on him to fill emotional gaps he didn't create. Instead, he sees an equal, someone who chooses him, not out of fear, not out of need, but out of desire. And men don't forget the woman who chooses them from a place of strength rather than scarcity. This kind of woman becomes memorable because she breaks a pattern. Most men have experienced being with someone who made them responsible for her self-esteem or sense of security. So when he meets a woman who is emotionally steady, who doesn't crumble, who isn't shaken by distance, who doesn't rely on reassurance as a lifeline, she stands out. She feels different. She feels rare. And rarity is unforgettable. So here's the insight to take with you. Emotional independence doesn't mean you love less. It means you love from a place that's whole, not hollow. When you build a life you're proud of, a world that is rich and meaningful on its own, you don't cling to anyone. You choose them. And the right man will always be drawn to a woman who chooses him but never needs him to define her. Here is a full 550-word expansion, off-key point 5, written in Matthew Hussey's intellectual, grounded, psychologically rich tone, flowing naturally with your previous points and ending with a sharp, reflective closing line. There's a quiet kind of power in a woman who is willing to let a man feel the consequences of how he's showing up, not by punishing him, not by pulling away in theatrics, but by being honest about her limits and then honoring those limits with actions. Men don't forget this kind of woman because she teaches him something about himself, something most people avoid teaching out of fear of losing someone. And when you're not afraid to lose someone, you become someone they are terrified to lose. What most people don't understand is that boundaries are not created to control the other person. They are created to protect the relationship with yourself. But ironically, when you protect the relationship you have with yourself, you make it far easier for a man to respect you and far harder for him to take you for granted. He may not know how to articulate it, but he feels it. He feels the difference between someone who talks about standards and someone who embodies them. Imagine two people having the same conversation. I don't like when you disappear without communicating, or I need consistency. One says it with a shaky voice, hoping the other person will adjust. The other says it calmly, clearly, and then, if the pattern continues, she adjusts her own behavior. She stops overgiving, stops rearranging her life, stops throwing energy into a dynamic that isn't meeting her where she stands. Those two conversations sound similar, but they could not be more different in impact. Men don't forget the woman who ties her boundaries to action because she becomes a mirror for his maturity. If he's ready to rise, he will. If he's not, he won't, and she'll walk away with grace instead of resentment. That kind of composure is unforgettable. And the truth is, even the men who don't step up immediately feel the loss of that structure. Not because she was perfect, but because she was clear. Because she wasn't trying to convince him of her worth, she was living it. There's something profoundly attractive about that level of self-governed behavior. It creates a sense of emotional safety that doesn't come from softness alone, but from clarity. Softness without clarity becomes self-sacrifice. Clarity without softness becomes rigidity. But when a woman combines both, soft heart, strong boundaries, it produces a balance most men only experience a few times in their lives, if ever. And here's the deeper psychological truth. Boundaries teach a man how to treat you, but they also teach him how capable he is of treating someone well. They elevate not just the relationship, but the person. When you play small, you invite small behavior. When you raise the standard of how you allow yourself to be treated, you invite the man to meet you there or to step aside so someone else can. Either way, you win, and either way, he remembers. So if there's one thing to take from this, it's that boundaries, are not walls, they are invitations. An invitation for someone to meet you with their highest self. And if they don't, you walk away knowing you honored yours. Because a man may forget many things, but he never forgets the woman who taught him his behavior had meaning. Here is a full 550-word expansion of key point 6, written in the same tone, depth, and flow as the earlier segments, intellectual, grounded, psychologically rich, and aligned with a Matthew Hussey style delivery. It ends with a sharp, memorable closing statement for strong impact. There's a unique kind of presence that certain women bring into a man's life, one that stays with him long after the relationship ends, long after the messages stop, long after he pretends he's fine. And this presence doesn't come from being perfect or endlessly accommodating. It comes from a woman who knows how to show genuine warmth while still maintaining her independence. She's connected, but not consumed. She's caring, but not collapsing her life into someone else's. And men don't forget that combination because it's rare, it's magnetic, and it's the kind of energy that teaches him what healthy love actually feels like. There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who can be fully engaged in a relationship without making it her entire identity. She knows how to invest, but she also knows how to hold on to the things that make her uniquely herself. Her passions, her friendships, her goals, her routines. She doesn't disappear into the relationship. She expands within it. And that expansion creates a gravitational pull that men find unforgettable because it challenges them to grow alongside her instead of relying solely on her for emotional fulfillment. Most people think love is about merging into one, but real connection is about two people standing side by side without losing the edges that make them who they are. When a woman continues to nurture her own life, it sends a subtle yet powerful message: I choose you, but I don't depend on you for meaning. That distinction creates both comfort and respect. It comforts a man because he doesn't feel responsible for her entire emotional world, and it earns respect because he sees that he's with someone who lives with purpose, not someone seeking rescue. A woman like this becomes a source of inspiration rather than pressure. Her independence isn't a threat, it's an invitation for him to match her, to build himself, to live with intention. Men may not always communicate it well, but deep down they crave this kind of partner, someone who adds to their life without trying to replace the work they must do within themselves, someone who supports without surrendering their own identity. And what's interesting is how this balance shifts the dynamic. When a woman isn't overly available, not in a manipulative way, but in a grounded, self-respecting way, a man starts to value the time he gets with her. He becomes more intentional, more aware, more present, because he can feel that she's not just there, she's choosing to be there, and choice carries weight. That's what makes her unforgettable. Not drama, not silence, not games, but the clarity of her presence, combined with the richness of her own life. She becomes the memory that lingers, not because she tried to be irreplaceable, but because she lived in a way that naturally was. And here's the truth that ties it all together. The relationships that leave the deepest imprint are the ones where both people grow, not accidentally, but because they are inspired by each other's example. Be the person whose existence raises the standard simply by being lived fully. Because in the end, a man never forgets the woman who taught him that love feels strongest when it's built on two whole people, not one half waiting to be completed.